Hello, my name is Ruslan. Today I'll tell you a crazy story you won't forget.
I found out my marriage had an expiration date at 4:00 p.m. on a Tuesday, when my phone buzzed with a notification that $14,000 had just left our joint savings. I was in line at the hardware store, 2 gallons of paint in a basket, thinking about the way Sophia had circled a color called sea glass in a magazine. We'd been planning to repaint the living room for months. New year, new walls, new patience. That was the joke. I kept telling myself every time our arguments went quiet instead of solved. The text on my screen glowed like a fire alarm. Transfers, $14,000. Recipient, Northstar Events LLC. I stared at the name like it might rearrange itself into groceries. And a sensible choice. I didn't know a Northstar. I knew mortgage. I knew daycare. I knew orthodontist bills marching toward us like tiny, expensive soldiers. I left the paint at the counter and drove home on a road I suddenly didn't recognize. The sky was the gray of an unanswered question. I walked into a living room the color of old oatmeal and set my keys down like a man, pretending this was a normal day. Sophia was at the table with her laptop open and a dress draped across the back of a chair. The dress was black and slippery, expensive in the way a fabric can whisper its price. She looked up and gave me a smile I had once worked for. "You're home early. Why did $14,000 just go to something called Northstar Events?" I asked, and heard how calm I sounded. Shock makes politeness its first casualty, and somehow I was still standing. She shut the laptop carefully, like it was a sleeping animal. "I should have told you first," she said. "I'm sorry. It's for an opportunity." "What kind of opportunity costs more than to use cars?" "A party," she said, and then, realizing how that sounded, added quickly, "A fundraiser. A gala. For Mark's foundation." A name I knew and didn't. Mark Valens, the man with the just-in-time smile. A client of the hotel where Sophia managed corporate events. He'd appeared in our house recently the way a song gets stuck in your head, first catchy, then everywhere. He had a logistics company, and a story about growing up poor that played well on stages where the wine was older than most marriages. "A gala," I repeated. "So we're sponsoring now." "It's not like that." Her jaw tightened. "He asked me to come on board as a consultant. He wants me to head his event strategy. This is a buy-in for the launch. I get a percentage of the foundation's vendor contracts. It's a way out for us, Daniel." The last sentence hung between us like a rope that might be a lifeline or a noose. "A way out of what?" I asked, though we both knew. "The bills. The long scrape of 2 jobs that never quite met at comfort. The nights we counted coins at the kitchen table and promised it was temporary. A word we said until it lost its meaning. Of this," she said, softer, "of watching the meter, of worrying about Olive's braces and my mother's meds and weather. The car will start in February. Mark believes in me." The sentence hit me into places pride and fear. I had always believed in her. I just didn't have a checkbook that could prove it. "So you moved our savings without asking," I said. "Because a very rich man believes in you." Sophia flinched at very rich like it was an insult. "Because I'm good at what I do, and this is the first person who's treated me like I'm worth a number in his head." I wanted to say 100 things. I wanted to ask if believing in her included the way he watched her mouth when she talked. I wanted to ask about the dress, the hotel reservations I'd seen pop up on our account as blocked for corporate. I wanted to fling the words Northstar Events like a plate. Instead I nodded, which was my worst habit. I nodded at trouble, the way a person nods at a familiar neighbor. "Okay," I said. "Then we need to talk about what transparency looks like when you're using our money to join someone else's orbit." Sophia pressed her fingers to her temples. "Don't make it ugly before it has a chance to be beautiful. Beautiful doesn't usually require a wire transfer," I said, and hated the pettiness of it even as I meant it. She stood and touched the black dress like a lucky talisman. "He invited us both," she said, "to the gala. Saturday. Come, see, judge for yourself." I went. Of course I went. Pride dressed as curiosity, and I borrowed the time my brother had given. The venue was a museum made of angles and glass, the kind of place where sound behaves. People glided. Waiters distributed shrimp on spoons, which is how you know a room has never worried about groceries. Sophia was a star there, and she knew it head high. Laugh tuned exactly to the acoustics, a comic tale of admiration behind her. Mark found us fast. He was taller than I remembered, or maybe money gives height. His suit fit like the word custom. He shook my hand like he'd already forgiven me for something. "Daniel," he said, "the man behind the magic." I didn't know which of us he was flattering. He told a story about his mother, donor's eyes dude at the edges, He mentioned Sophia 3 times in 7 minutes by name and once as my secret weapon. He didn't look at her like a weapon. He looked at her like an acquisition. By dessert, I could see the shape of it. Sophia had built an elevator out of her talent. Mark had offered to hold the door. And standing there in my borrowed tie, I realized how much I wanted someone to hold a door for me too. Envy is the sibling of love. It wears the same face in bad lighting. On the drive home, Sophia hummed with a happiness that didn't ask my permission. Did you see the art installation in the atrium? The one with the paper boats and the soundscape of rain. I saw the way he watched you, I said. She looked out the window, city sliding by in little slices. He respects me. There are a lot of ways to spell that, I said. Some of them end in my name. Sophia sighed and turned toward me. You think I can't tell the difference? I think money is a very persuasive language, and he's fluent. She didn't answer. We passed our block, porch light off, mailbox going to sea. The house looked like someone else's memory. 2 weeks later, our savings were lighter again. $7,500 this time. Vendor deposits, Sophia said, breezy, which is always a word used by people who will not be paying the bounce fee. I started waking early to do the math. A private ritual of counting what had left and what hadn't. One morning, while Olive slept and the kettle hissed, I opened Sophia's laptop to look for a spreadsheet and found a folder called An Essay Confidential because fate is not subtle. Inside were contracts, NDAs, and a message from Mark. You're wasted at that hotel. I can make you a partner in 6 months. We'll get you out of there and somewhere that fits. A winking emoji. A reservation for 2 at a resort 3 hours north. A night I remember, because Sophia had told me she was stuck late resolving a linen shortage. When I confronted her, she didn't deny. She turned the screen toward herself and read the sentence again, as if the words might rearrange into an alibi. It's business. Then why the resort? I asked. She swallowed. The worst thing about the truth is how it stains the mouth before it comes out. It wasn't. It wasn't supposed to be what it was. What was it? Dinner. A celebration. Then a conversation that felt like being seen after a long winter. She flinched at her own sentence. And then a mistake. A mistake with a room number, I said. And hated that this was who I sounded like, an accountant of sin. Sophia closed the laptop gently. Terror stood in her eyes, bright and infuriating. I have been patching holes with coupons and apologies for years, she said. I've been strong enough for both of us. I love you, Daniel, but I am so tired of being the person who makes do. This isn't about coupons, I said. This is about choosing someone because he can. By the version of you that feels easy. Easy, she laughed, harsh. Do you think it's easy to crawl into a man's world and convince him you're more than decoration? Do you think it's easy to hold a room like that and not feel like you stole it? He says I deserve the stage. He treats me like I'm not an accident. And what am I asked. You're the man I married when I thought love could feed us, she said quietly. You're kind, you're patient, you're a good father. You're not a door. I sat down because standing felt like a performance. So this is because I don't make enough money. It's because money is the thing that has been chewing us, she said. And there was no victory in her voice. I choose to stop being chewed by climbing into the mouth, I said. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, angry at the wetness. I'm leaving. There it was, not dressed up as an opportunity, just the sentence that tilts a life. For him, I asked. For me, she said. And yes, for what he promises. For a life where the living room gets painted when I want it painted, not when the coupons align. For a world where being excellent doesn't feel like a hobby. I looked at the walls. Sea glass stared back at me. From a circle of magazine paper, taped to beige like a prophecy with blue. What about Olive? She loves you, Sophia said. She needs you. We'll do this carefully. I want 50-50. I want her to see to parents who aren't drowning. I want her to see to parents who didn't sell the lifeboat for a better boat, I said, and then closed my eyes because cruelty is a muscle that gets strong when you're scared. Sophia packed a suitcase that night. Not everything. Enough to mark the house as a place she was now visiting. She kissed Olive's forehead in the morning and told her there was a new job, a new apartment, a more grown-up kitchen. Olive was 9 and knew more than anyone was telling her. She looked at me with a wise, curious face. Is this because of that tall man who gives mom flowers shaped like triangles? Maybe, I said. It's also because adults are not always the same people they were when they promise things. She nodded in a slow, dangerous way that made me love her more than oxygen. Then we need a new promise, she said. You don't get to stop being my dad. I won't, I said. I have never meant anything harder. Sophia moved into a glass building with a gym and a doorman who said her name like a password. Mark was there a lot. Olive reported this in small, careful sentences after her first weekend. He cooks eggs that look like clouds. He doesn't like cartoons. He thinks the art I made at camp is interesting, and that's how Mom says bad. The divorce was ugly only on paper. We achieved civility like a truce drafted by tired countries. I learned the geometry of two lives measured in weeks and Tuesdays. I learned to make lasagna with zucchini because Olive had decided Wheat was a villain. I learned the quiet at night wasn't empty. It was an invitation to survive. Sometimes, late, I scrolled the social feeds I'd sworn to ignore. Sophia in gowns at charity things. Sophia on a stage introducing a man whose childhood had become a brand. Sophia on a balcony at dusk, the skyline like jewelry. A caption about gratitude and hustle. Comments that said goals and tweet. It was like watching a movie where the character who used to be yours finds better lighting. The first time Olive cried about it was a Tuesday. She was doing homework at my kitchen table, frowning at fractions. When her pencil snapped in, she said, without looking up, "Do you think Mom loves me more when Mark is busy?" I moved her books aside and pulled her into my lap, even though she was getting long for that. "I think your mom loves you the same all the time," I said. "I think adults are sometimes bad at dividing their attention without breaking the pencil." She snorted a laugh that was half sob. "You're not funny," she said, and let me be a pillow for a while. Months passed. Seaglass stayed in its magazine circle. The house taught me how to live alone. Then, at 11:11 p.m. on a Thursday, Sophia called. I watched the screen buzz across the room, like a fish, and considered letting it go to voicemail. Habit answered. "Hey," I said, steady. She didn't start with hello. "He doesn't want kids," she said, voice raw. "Not in the house, not on the weekends when he has donuts, not loud, not silly, not." Olive. Anger rose like a sudden, clean flame. "He met her as part of you. He doesn't get to edit. He's edited everything," she said, a sound like a laugh breaking. "My schedule, my wardrobe, mine. We thought we were building something. Turns out I was the something." I leaned back in my chair and looked at the ceiling, where a hairline crack traced itself like a map to somewhere drier. "Come home," I said before I knew I would. Silence. I could hear her breathing and the expensive emptiness of the apartment she had chosen. "There's no home to come to," she said finally. "There's your house and my apartment and a girl who deserves better geography. You're still her mother," I said. "I know." She swallowed. "I don't know how to be the mother she deserves and the woman he wants." "Then stop trying to be both," I said, and felt something inside me soften like metal, remembering it was one sort. Sophia didn't leave Mark that night. There are golden handcuffs that never touch skin, but she started to visit our street more often. She came to Olive's soccer games and yelled too loud. She stood in my kitchen and poured coffee like it forgave a debt. We talked like people at the end of a bridge. One afternoon, Mark showed up at a game, sunglasses, impatience, the wrong shoes for grass. He shook my hand like I was a vendor late with delivery. He stood beside Sophia and whispered into her hair while our daughter stole the ball and lost it. Stole it again, fell down laughing. When Olive ran to the side to look for water, she looked at him and said perfectly, "You can cheer." He smiled without teeth and said, "I clap when it matters, kiddo." That night, Sophia knocked on my door with a suitcase. "It's not a permanent thing," she said. "I just need to be where the clapping is easy." I moved the suitcase into the hallway and we stood there in a room we used to share a life in. "Sea glass is still on the table," I said. "I never painted. It felt like lying." He smiled in a way that looked like grief learning to forgive itself. "Let's paint," she said. We did. It took 2 weekends and more tape than dignity, and Olive painted a crooked heart in the corner behind the couch like a time capsule. When we were done, the room looked like a promise we might be able to keep. Sophia didn't move back in. She found a smaller place halfway between mine and the glitter where she had been trying to live. She kept her job she was good at it, but she stopped letting it dress up as salvation. She told Mark no publicly exactly once, at a board meeting where he suggested children's programming was off-brand. She said, "Being decent is always on brand." He stopped inviting her to the balcony at dusk. We learned a new kind of ordinary. It wasn't the old one. It wasn't the movie. It was ours. Olive grew taller and more complicated and started to see about cafeteria injustice. I learned to fix the leaking sink without cursing. Sophia bought her own mixing bowls and brought them over when she baked at my house, which was often. Sometimes she'd stay for a slice and we'd talk about nothing in particular until until the talking felt like a habit we had managed to keep. People asked me if I'd take her back. I still don't know the answer the way they want me. I didn't take her back like a lost package. I didn't slam a door, either. We became something that required new names. Co-parents, friends, veterans of a war neither of us won. Every once in a while, in a quiet store at a kind of. My phone still buzzes with a bank notification, and my heart stumbles like it's remembering stairs. Then I breathe and remember we have enough. Not more than enough, not balcony enough, but enough. Last week, Olive had a school project where she had to draw her family as a house. She drew 2 houses connected by a bridge. On one roof she wrote Mom in giant letters. On the other she wrote Dad. On the bridge, she wrote me and drew a little stick figure with wild hair and a flag. At the bottom she wrote, like a headline, "See glass." I asked why. She shrugged like a philosopher. Because it's broken glass, but it gets soft, she said. And it's still pretty. That night, after I tucked her in and checked the front door twice, I stood in a living room the color of something we chose and realized the hook I thought was the start of our ending had been the first sharp edge, something that could still shine. Sophia texted me a photo of Olive asleep on her couch, open mouth, superhero socks. "Thank you for painting the bridge with me," she wrote. "Thank you for not selling it for parts," I wrote back, and meant it. Sometimes love leaves with a wire transfer and returns as a candy paint. Sometimes the richest thing you can give a child is two parents who learn how to clap at the right moments. And sometimes the loudest truth is a laugh in a room full of donors that finally sounds like it knows the price of what it's buying. I still think about Mark when I pass the museum at night. I wonder how many galas it takes to buy the echo out of an empty apartment. I don't envy him anymore. My house is smaller than his and louder, and the walls are the color of a promise no one will ever mistake for cash.